Hi, and welcome to this live reading from her Blackened Heart, Blackened Series Book 2 by Isra Sravenheart, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. It was at dusk on a summer night. Pink skies darkened as a raven flew in from beneath the clouds and landed on a grassy bank in the middle of a great forest. At first glance, it was just a raven. Its beady black eyes held the tiniest hint of yellow, and its black wings shimmered in the last rays of the sun. Then, a moment later, it became clear that this raven was not just any raven, as his form shifted into that of a man. The man admired his new handsome appearance and muttered under his breath a few chosen words so quietly that they could not be heard by human ears, nor would he want them to be. This raven was Astrid, the faithful lover of Lady Isra, a witch who dwelled in the forest. A year ago, her tower had disappeared from view. Astrid had insisted on this as a very important security measure. He was determined to keep the witch from prying human eyes. But of course, she was more than capable of looking after herself, being a witch and all. He and Lady Isra had been together for about a year and a half now, and were close companions. He loved the witch's dark heart and was very fond of her as she was of him. Any time he went out, he would transform himself back into his raven form. The reason he was so careful when he ventured in and out was that Lady Isra and Astrid's tower had been cloaked from all human eyes with a powerful invisibility spell, and only a few specially chosen words made it visible. It worked the same way as a door, only he and Lady Isra had the metaphysical key that opened the dark fortress that was their home. A few things had changed in the tower since Astrid had been with Lady Isra. The interior had changed slightly. He preferred the scarlet red that now dominated most of the building and created a vibrant energy. Their bedroom mixed purple, red, and black. Purple and black walls showcased a black bed, bedspread, and curtains. All of this was done as if by magic. Astrid had become an expert at transforming since Lady Isra shifted him into human form. Still, he never saw himself as human, as this form was just a body. He had learned how to work and manage his energy better and could aid Lady Isra on a number of her spells. She had taught him much, and he was a fast learner as he didn't need a single tool to work his magic. Not just any raven could do what Astrid did. Lady Isra was proud of how accomplished he had become. Astrid had mastered shape-shifting well, and although he struggled with reading human books, he had completed the study quickly and learned more every day. But what about Lady Isra? What about her powers, you might wonder? Had they grown, or had they weakened? Well, neither had happened. Since her revenge on Cain, she found she didn't need to use magic, but this contentment was also due to Astrid's presence. She had found her other half. She was complete now. Still dark, she didn't need to use magic, but before you ask, no, she had not turned over a new leaf. When you are dark, you are dark. You don't go back. Lady Isra had no intention of going back. She wasn't about to become some goody two-shoes who would go dancing off into the light. No, that would be rather boring, wouldn't it? Since getting her revenge and totally destroying Cain, she didn't find she had a need for magic. The impulses and the power it gave her were still there, but she didn't need it. Whether you would consider that good or bad, I will allow you to make your own judgments. Lady Isra was quite happy with it all. She looked radiant with her long black curly hair that hung down to her bottom. Her piercing green eyes looked even greener, as if brightened with lightning. But what else had been happening around the place, you ask? Astrid and Lady Isra were as strong as they could ever be in their union filled with power, love, and trust. Their loyalty was as solid as the walls of the tower themselves. Nothing could ever break it down or tear it, as the energy between them was too strong. After Cain's demise, it was Astrid who had suggested that the tower be cloaked from the human world so Lady Isra could be protected. It was not clear why he had wanted this, but her location and the fact that she was still around was to remain a closely guarded secret. It was all his doing. He had insisted. Lady Isra had no part in it except that she agreed to his request. She was pleased by how much he cared about her safety and well-being. Despite knowing that she could protect herself, she had agreed to put the tower under a powerful invisibility spell. Nobody, except Astrid and Lady Isra, would have any clue about its existence. Humans would not be able to find it, and magical folk would have an equally hard job as it was so well hidden. Anybody who tried would, in fact, be stupid to do so. Astrid paused for a moment as he felt an energy go through him, and then he stepped inside. It was quiet, but he called for Lady Isra to see if she was home. He was very cautious about her going out, but she was too much of a free spirit and often left for walks. Fear pricked his heart as he called for her again. Instantly she was there, letting him place a kiss on her forehead. It was a simple sign of protection and devotion, but it was something Lady Isra had not experienced for a very long time before she met Astrid. "Good morning, love. I trust all is well in that ghastly human world," she joked as he placed his hands around her back and pulled her into an embrace. "Yes, they are fine," he mumbled into her hair, "but still so terribly human." She chuckled and then paused as she heard sounds coming from outside. Astrid heard it too as he saw her eyes dart to the window. "What was that, Astrid?" "I have no idea, but I hope for their sakes that they know who I am." She thought to herself, "Well, they may not, but I know who you are." He went to the window to see what it was. Now, of course, with the tower being cloaked, anyone looking up towards the tower would have only seen the sky. That is how strong the cloaking of the invisibility spell was. Not that Astrid was sure that they even needed it. For who would dare enter the home of a witch? Whoever was out there was making that racket clearly had a death wish. Suddenly, and much to the surprise of Lady Isra, Astrid dashed downstairs and out the door like his heart was on fire. Chapter 2. Astrid rushed in the tower, cursing and shouting. His footsteps stomped up the stairs and something bumped along behind him. It was a gnome, a short, terrified gnome. He didn't have any standards of cleanliness, and his clothes were tattered. Ratty hair peeked out from under his hat. Astrid held it by his ears as the shivering little man winced and whimpered. "I found this parasite lurking around outside. He could see us and the tower. Somehow he can get through the invisibility spell we put on it." He is a gnome. He has magic in him, but what was he doing snooping around?" Lady Isra said. "Good question. What were you doing outside?" Astrid asked with a tug on the gnome's ear. The gnome fell into a slobbering mess. "I beg you, please spare me. I mean you no harm. I was just looking for a safe place in the woods as I cannot go back home. I will be killed if I do." He finished off his story in a wail. The gnome wasn't convincing, but Isra decided to play along. "Well, we could keep him. I suppose he could be useful now and then when the moment strikes." "Useful might be a bit strong of a word for this creature." Isra sniggered. What can you do, my fine fellow? And please do tell me your name." He straightened up as Astrid loosened his grip on him. "My name is Clink. I'm from a village a little journey from here named Spindlevich." Lady Isra shrieked in laughter, much to Astrid's bewilderment. Spindlevich, she knew the name, and that wasn't the only reason she was laughing. She fondly remembered as it was the home village of Lillian, the maiden she had brutally killed a year ago. "Spindlevich, what a beautiful place! I love it there," she said. Astrid, still puzzled, did not recognize the name of the place, and he did not know why Lady Isra found it so amusing. "You know it?" Clink asked. Lady Isra laughed again. "Yes, I know it well. A sweet place to visit, especially if you are human." Her answer did nothing to clear up Clink's and Astrid's confusion. "Well, it's settled then. Clink, welcome to your new home," she said. "And in return for my kind hospitality, I will require you to be my eyes and ears to the human world." And so the gnome found himself pressed into service to spy for a witch. How exciting! Or maybe not. He had to admit he was frightened by the notion, but it was too late now. Rejecting her offer might offend her, and offending a witch is always a risky proposition. And it was the way she laughed that scared him the most. Clink didn't have a very good track record of making anything good. Everyone who knew him said he had only one strong talent. He could mess up anything. And that was something he should have thought of before accepting Lady Isra's offer. Was her offer a kind one, or was there something more menacing behind it? Yes, she wanted to spy for the human world. Yes, she could not stand the humans. Their very existence made her want to vomit. Any act of kindness or good repulsed her unless it was from Astrid, so it raised the question why she had offered this desperate gnome a home and, more importantly, a job. Not a good one, but a job nonetheless. Clink was shown his quarters, the basement where the slave boy Cain was once held hostage. The place looked a little different now. The chains had been tidied away, hoisted on a side wall, and the padlock had been taken off the door and put aside. The dark, dreary walls had been painted a neutral, earthy color, more appropriate for a fairy's cave than a witch's dungeon. And although the room was fairly small, it looked much bigger from his perspective and almost welcoming. Clink settled his rucksack on the antique bed, quite a large one for a gnome his size, and emptied his things. He took a glance at his new home and decided it was a nice place despite its mysterious inhabitants. Lady Isra and Astrid struck him as an odd couple, very close with one another even though she was a witch. That was all he knew. He also didn't know too much about what his role as spy would entail. He was informed that Lady Isra would give him his instructions on his role, so there was nothing more that he could do for now but pass the night. And so he curled up in his bed, listening to the howling of the wind, and went to sleep. Clink woke up early the next morning. He didn't want to mess this up, and he figured that if he planned out all his steps before receiving his instructions, everything would be okay. He didn't know what he would be asked to do. He knew his new employer was a witch, and not a very nice one at that. His first impressions of her weren't good, but he hoped that she would be nice to him and consider his good qualities even though those were few. He brushed his scruffy brown hair as best as he could and made his way upstairs, following the sound of laughter. Astrid and Isra were collapsed on the couch laughing, their faces as red as apples. Astrid had his arms around the witch's waist while she struggled to catch her breath. The door creaked when Clink pushed it open, and they both straightened themselves up immediately. Lady Isra greeted Clink formally while Astrid just stared at the gnome. The scrutiny of those glittering black eyes made him self-conscious. The bald patch on the top of his head must be showing. "I presume you passed the night in my dungeon well?" she inquired. Clink looked bemused at this. "Dungeon?" "Yes, before you arrived it was used to hold my slave boy," she purred sweetly. "There have been a few modifications since then, but enough about my decor. Here, this is for you." Lady Isra handed him a folded piece of parchment, and his little hands pulled it open.